Shalom. For those listening at home, we are in Bashirit. That is Genesis chapter 34. It's been a few weeks since I spoke. I've had some time to really mull over this chapter because I was actually prepared to teach it several weeks ago, and between my having to go to the hospital and our daughter having to be in the hospital and some other situations that Yaakov and I were traveling one weekend into Michigan and back, visited some friends on the way back and weren't here on Shabbat. So it's been, I think, almost a month since I spoke. That's given me that time to think about this chapter a great deal. Says, now Dinah, the daughter whom Leah had borne to Yaakov, went out to visit the daughters of the land. I want you to think, as you read this, first off, Dinah, as far as we know, the scripture doesn't say, I don't think anywhere that it says that she is Yaakov's only daughter, but she is the only daughter that is ever mentioned. Okay, we know that he had 12 sons. We know that they became the patriarchs of Israel. We know that Leah bore him Dinah. I believe she was the last child that Leah gave him. Then she stopped conceiving. But it's interesting, and I always pondered why the emphasis on the daughter whom Leah had born to Yaakov, because there's so much, we hear so much that, quote unquote, in Bible times, daughters weren't as important. Daughters weren't treated as anything but, something to be treated. I hear that taught when I hear this chapter taught. I hear a lot that, he used her for a business deal. But it's interesting that it's the daughter whom Leah had born to Yaakov. And I think we're going to understand why later when we get to the deeds of some of his sons. It says, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Okay? So she's a young woman. From what we know, there were no other young women around. Maybe her older brothers had daughters who might have been close to her age, or maybe not. We don't know exactly how old the grandchildren of Yaakov were. But it says that she went out and visited the daughters of the land. So she went out among non-Israelim, among the Goy. It says, Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, chief of the country, saw her and took her and lay with her by force. Now I have heard this taught that, you see, she should not have been out there among the Goyim. She should not have been talking to the young women of the land. Because obviously, if she had not been talking to the young women of the land, then she would have not have done whatever it was that led to this grievous situation. But Scripture never says that. Scripture states that she went out to talk to the Goyim. For all we know, she could have gone out to talk about the truth of what would later be recorded in Torah, to be talking to them about the Elohim of Abraham. We don't know why she went. She could have went and say, where do you all get these best foods? You know what I'm saying? Because we have all these people back in our camp that we have to feed. There could have been any number of reasons. She could have been sent. It doesn't tell us. And so I want to strongly encourage you to stop and think the next time you hear Dinah put down for being there, talking to the daughters of the land, ask yourself, do we know why she was there? I think there's been a lot of judgment on her down through the ages that was very misplaced. It says that he came and he lay with her by force, being strongly drawn to Dinah, daughter of Yaakov, and in love with the maiden. He spoke to the maiden tenderly. So Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as a wife." Now, different translations do this differently. And I've heard people twist this and say, she's a little loose. Okay? That's not what the Hebrew word here means. The Hebrew word here means rape. Okay? He took her by force is a politically correct way that we shouldn't use. We should just say what it was. He forcibly had relations with her. Okay? What does that mean in the context of Torah? Does that mean that she was unwilling? In the context of Torah, not necessarily. In the context of Torah, it means her father had not given any blessing. Okay? And that's a large part of what I get out of this text when I study it these last few weeks. Because it does not say anywhere here that she was against this. Okay? She was going out, visiting the daughters of the land. She met this man and says that he spoke tenderly to her because he loved her. Okay? It does not say anywhere that he physically forced her. I believe the word here is that it was forced is that he was forcibly took her out from under the authority of her father. Okay? Because it was the place of the father to determine whom she would marry. Yaakov heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah. But since his sons were in the field with his cattle, Yaakov kept silent until they came home. Now, I have to admit I'm divided on that. Because his sons were out in the field, he kept silent. Was it the place of his sons to deal with this? Now, I can easily look at it and say this was the chief of the whole land versus this guy who had a following. He had people with him, but they weren't warriors. Okay? They weren't ready to go out and fight. So he waited until all of his sons were present. But the issue was between Yaakov and Shechem. Okay? It wasn't about the two peoples. It was about a father and the man who was now, very biblically speaking, the husband of his daughter. Between a father-in-law and a son-in-law. This was not about two nations. It becomes about that, and we'll read that, but this was about a family quarrel. Then Shechem's father Hamor came out to Yaakov to speak to him. Now catch that. Hamor, Shechem's father, is a goy. He is not Yisraelim. He's not one of us. And yet he does the right thing. He comes to Yaakov and he says, let's make this right. Says, okay, I understand, according to your laws and your customs, my son did wrong. According to ours, this is no big deal, but we'll make right. We don't want animosity. Meanwhile, Yaakov's sons, having heard the news, came in from the field. The men were distressed and very angry because he had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with Yaakov's daughter, a thing not to be done. The thing not to be done. And we read that, and throughout the ages, people will say, see, it was this grievous thing. But what was not to be done? Not to marry another man's daughter? Well, not to marry the daughter of a man who doesn't even know you exist and hasn't allowed you into his daughter's life and hasn't agreed that you will be his son-in-law. There's more to it than that. And Hamor spoke with him, saying, my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. It's out of order, but it's being done. All the right things done in the wrong order. Unfortunately, being human, sometimes we have to back up and make things right. Hamor understood that. Intermarry with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. You will dwell among us, and the land will be open before you. Settle, move about, and acquire holdings in it. In other words, he says, you know what? We want you to be part of us. We want us to be part of you. Let's be a family. Nobody has to live in anger. No one has to hate anybody. No one has to want to harm anyone. I don't think he would have gone to that. This is one of the things that makes me think that this was not a rape in the sense that people have portrayed it. Because I don't think the father of the rapist would go to the father of the victim and say, let's make a business deal to make this okay. I don't think in any time period, in any way, would this have been an acceptable way to handle it, something like that. But if both individuals were consenting and things were simply done out of order, and one father goes to the other one and says, let's not have hard feelings over this. Let's just do this right. Let's officiate let's make it official that they are husband and wife. We will be kinsmen. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. We'll unite the families. Then Shechem said to her father and brothers, do me this favor, and I will pay whatever you tell me. Again, right thing, wrong order. I have a question. Shechem, being Goy, being of the Goyim, does he have any need to know, until this point in his life, does he have any need to know the laws and the customs of Israel? No. And what he did was not unacceptable in his culture. I think it's quite possible he did not know that he was going to offend the family of Dinah. And so here he is speaking to her father and her brothers and saying, man to man, okay, I understand, I offended you, let me make this right. It says, ask of me a bride price ever so high. He doesn't just say, ask of me a bride price. He says, you set it as high as you want. As well as gifts. So he says, not only am I going to give the bride price to Yaakov, brothers of Dinah, line up. I'm going to give you gifts from my kingdom, whatever you desire. And I will pay what you tell me, only give me the maiden for a wife. In other words, I didn't mean to do this wrong, but now that I know the right way, let me do this the right way. Yaakov's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor, speaking with guile because he had defiled their sister Dinah, and said to them, and this is where we need to stop and think for a second. The Goyim have come to make right on what they did wrong without knowing it was offensive. And the Ben Abraham, the Ben Yaakov, Ben Yisrael, Ben Yitzhak, our people, speak to them with guile. What does that say? What does that say? I think there's a warning there. Because they said to them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for that is a disgrace among us. Is that a lie? No. It's absolutely true. Any man who ever wants to marry my daughters, he better be circumcised. He better be in the covenant. And he better intend to marry my daughter and give her children who they will raise up in the covenant. So this is not a lie. And yet it's spoken with guile. It says, only on this condition will we agree with you that you will become like us in that every male among you is circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you and take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell among you and become as one kindred. But if you will not listen to us and become circumcised, we will take our daughter and go. Now here's the thing. Is it their daughter? No, it's the daughter of their house. Just like their sons of the house. It's not their daughter. But they throw this in here. And they're speaking truth, and yet they're speaking it with guile. They're speaking it with deceit. You know what this reminds me of? When I was reading it again this morning, it jumped out at me. What did the serpent do in the garden? Not so many chapters back. 31 chapters back. What did the serpent in the garden do? He spoke some truth, and he spoke it in guile, deceit. He convinced our first mother, and she convinced our first father that what was spoken was to them, or to him, by Elohim, was not exactly accurate, or they didn't exactly understand it correctly. And you know what? You're not going to die today if you eat that. Did they die that day? No. Did they begin dying that day? Yes. Did humanity begin dying that day? Yes. Can we see a parallel here to what is being done? To what Ben Yaakov are doing here? They're telling them all the truth for a deceitful reason. I think there's another warning here to us. When we tell people the truth and we encourage people to do what is right, we have to make sure that we're doing it with the right heart, the right spirit. Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem. Can you imagine that as grown men? If you want to make right on what you did that offended us, line up and get circumcised. Can you imagine hearing that and saying, you know what? That's all we got to do. Let's do it. These men desperately wanted to make right. And historians and scholars say, well, why did they care? They could have overrun Israel. They could have destroyed us. They could have annihilated us. There would not have been a holy people. You know what I think? I think the reputation of the Elohim of Abraham preceded B'nai Abraham. I think not just not just hearing the stories of what he had done in Padan Aram for Yaakov, and not just hearing the stories of how Yaakov and his children had been blessed, and not just those things, but hearing the stories all the way back to when Abraham was in Canaanite the first time, 2 generations before. The types of stories that the servant of Abraham took to Laban and to that household that became Laban's later, and said, my master Abraham, he has a son, Yitzhak, and I want to take your daughter to marry him. Okay, those stories had come down, I guarantee, had come down through the tribal peoples of the land over the 2 generations. And they knew that this was a grandson of Abraham, and they knew that he followed the Elohim of Abraham. Who wouldn't want that guy and his family to be part of their camp? Who wouldn't want those blessings on his camp? And the youth lost no time in doing the thing, for he wanted Yaakov's daughter. Now he was the most respected of his father's house. Now this says something too, because even though we look at what he did and say that was disrespectful, he was the most respected of his father's house. And what does that tell me? That tells me that whatever moral and ethical guideposts they had in that land at that time, whatever they knew to be as close to what we would call righteous as it could be without them having the revelation of Elohim, that Yehovah having come to them directly, whatever those codes of right were, this man was doing it because he was the most respected of his father's house, and his father was so respected as to be chief of the land. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the public place of their town and spoke to their fellow townsmen, saying, "These people are our friends. Let them settle in the land and move about in it, for the land is large enough for them. We will take their daughters to ourselves as wives and give our daughters to them, but only on this condition will the men agree with us to dwell among us and be as one kindred, that all our males become circumcised as they are circumcised." Okay? It says, look, this is good for everyone, but we need to do this. We need to make this right. We need to become a part of them. Why do I say that we need to become a part of them? Because in the deal, there was never a mention of our people taking on any of their customs. Did you catch that? Now, a lot of people have written this as Israel was going to become a part of this other kingdom. That's not what it says. It says the other kingdom was going to adopt the practices of Israel and become kindred with us. This was an entire city-state, basically, willing to convert to the faith of Abraham. Their cattle and substance and all their beasts will be ours if we only agree to their terms so that they will settle among us. Whose terms? Israel's terms. Why was it Israel's terms? It should have been because that was the terms that Yehovah Elohim gave us. But what was the real reason? Because they were speaking in God, deceit. All who went out of the gate of his town heeded Hamor and his son Shechem, and all males, all those who went out of the gate of his town were circumcised. I remember my father-in-law has this saying, he took it from a preacher someplace, I can't remember the pastor's name that said it, but I always, when I come to this passage, I always think of it. He says, all means all, and that's all means. Does this mean a lot of the men? Does it mean some of the men? Does it mean the majority of the men? No, it means all of the men of this town. An entire little city-state went through the first step, well, could be the last step, went through the signifying step of conversion to the faith of Abraham. Everyone. That might possibly be, I'd say it's probably in the top three that I can think of most massive group conversion processes that ever start in Scripture. And all the men were willing, but the people leading them into it were being deceitful. What a shame. On the third day, when they were in pain, now medically speaking, it's interesting, we're commanded, if a man-child is born to us, we have him circumcised, we're supposed to have him circumcised on the 8th day. That's the commandment. Medically speaking, the 8th day of a male child's life is the single most perfect time for blood clotting. Okay? The most perfect time in a child's life to do a procedure like that and not risk like bleeding to death. And if you're in the middle of a wilderness circumcising somebody, you want to make sure you do it at a time they're not going to die, right? That, to me, that's one of the testaments to the fact of the divine revelation of scriptures, because how would Moshe know that? How would Abraham know that? Okay? But these men didn't have that opportunity. These men chose to come into the covenant later in life. And when a man is circumcised as an adult, and I've only known about, I think, about 3 or 4 guys who were circumcised, like truly circumcised as adults. The first couple days hurt, and the next couple days you wish you were going to die. Not only are you in pain, there tends to be a terrible fever, the worst flu-like symptoms you've ever imagined, and you wish you were dying. If you're not dying, you wish you would. That's how it's been described to me. On the third day, when they were in pain, Shimeon and Levi, 2 of Jacob's sons, brothers of Dinah. Think about that. Let's go back to the first verse of the chapter. Dinah, the daughter who Leah had born to Jacob. Okay? Whose sons were these? Jacob and Leah. Okay? Then it says it emphasizes they were brothers of Dinah. All of them were brothers of Dinah. But these shared not only the same father, the same mother, which tells us that they grew up not only in the same camp, but in the same tent. And they had probably a much closer bond with Dinah than most of the other brothers. Okay? Now, I meant to go look it up, and I forgot to, but I want to say that Shimeon and Levi were closer in age to Dinah than what her other full brothers were. I would have to look that up to be absolutely certain, but I get the feeling that not only do they grow up in the same tent, but they probably grew up closer. My wife talks about she had older sisters that she wanted to be close to, and at times in her life she has been, but the sibling she's always been closest to is the brother who was about the same age. Okay, they were playmates. Actually, he and his wife just had a baby, and a couple days before they had the baby, they were over here, and we were talking to them and giving them advice about family life and navigating family politics in the larger family and different things. We don't tend to have the others of her siblings come and seek that from us. But I think the reason that he and his wife do at times is because of that bond that's extra special because they were so close in age. Two of Jacob's sons, brothers of Dinah, took each his sword, came upon the city unmolested. You know what that means? That means no one in the city tried to stop them. No one in the city tried to harm them. No one in the city had done them wrong. Who had they done wrong? Their father. Do you see their father taking up arms? Did the sons have any business taking up arms? It says, and slew all the males. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword, took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went away. The other sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the town because their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and asses, all that was inside the town and outside, all their wealth, all their children and their wives, all that was in the houses, they took as captives and booty. So one man did something, one goy did something offensive to our law. And our response was to kill the entire male population of the city he came from. Is that an eye for an eye? No. Where was the true sin here? Was the true sin here with Shechem, who did wrong not knowing it and made right, or sought to? Was it with Hamor? Was it with the men of the city? Or was it with the sons of Jacob? As much as it breaks my heart to say it, the sin was with the sons of Jacob. Because they did not honor their father. They did not do right and let their sister be taken as a proper wife. They did not honor the choice of these men to enter into the covenant. They killed the men and then took their wives and their daughters and their livestock and anything else they could carry away as though it was the spoils of war. You know what they went on and did? They married those wives and they married those daughters. Just as the agreement had said, but you know what? They killed the men they made the agreement with, or that the father made the agreement with. That's not righteousness. Jacob said to Shimeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanite and the Perizzite. My men are few in number, so that if they unite against me and attack me, I and my house will be destroyed. He's saying, wasn't the heartache of what happened enough? Do you have to make it worse with your youthful hot-headedness? And they weren't even youthful anymore. They were adults. They had their own families. But they answered, should our sister be treated like a whore? The answer is no, their sister should not be treated like a whore, but she was not being so. Her husband, by biblical standards, was being shown grace by a man who had been shown grace. Yaakov had been allowed to make things right, and he understood the value of that. But somewhere along the lines, his sons had not learned the value of being able to make things right. They had not learned the power of grace. They were not walking in the father or in the faith of their father, their grandfather, or their great grandfather. And I think the reason for that is summed up in Yaakov's last statement there. I think the same reason he didn't go and speak to Shechem man to man until his sons were there is the same reason he made this statement at the end of the chapter. They outnumber me. They could destroy my whole people. There'd be nothing left. Where is the faith in that? He gives us a spirit of boldness, not a spirit of fear. That's what Scripture tells us, right? That if we are living righteously, if we are doing what is right by Him, if Elohim is with us, who can stand against us, right? Or as the summarize, I always think there's a summary for when Joshua and Caleb come back with the other 10 other spies, and they're like, the other spies are all like, there's giants over there, and those two are basically saying, don't you know who we serve? They didn't say those words, but that's what it comes down to. It's like, are you afraid of them, or are you afraid of the Elohim that created you? I think it was still a part of Yaakov's life where he was struggling in his faith walk, where he didn't have the faith to trust Elohim to protect him when he went and talked to Shechem, so he waited for the strength of numbers. And it backfired on him. If he had gone first to Shechem and had the discussion and said, you know what, yes, this is offensive to my people, but if you will cross over and become Hebron, if you will come and become part of Israel, you too can be a chieftain. There could be a 13th tribe. You could be a patriarch by grafting. He wouldn't have used those terms because he didn't know they were going to be patriarchs, but he could have said, you could be like a son to me, and you could inherit, and your children can inherit. Just get circumcised. And it could have all been done before her brothers showed up. And he could have said, guess what? You and I got married while you were gone. Now let's have a party. They had a little bit of cowardice. And he wouldn't say what had to be said. People, when we think as a group, we tend to not think clearly. We have to think as individuals. Individuals walking in faith. Because if we follow the crowd, we're usually going downhill into a pit. We think as individuals studying His Word, then we'll have that spirit of boldness. And we'll do what's right.